I'm like, I'll get in the middle of the double stuff, so I might include that. I hope so. I like that sort of that. I like it raw. There you go. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You are doing the Lord's work. Never change. Thank you. Great river. Very lucky. Thank you. In our previous vlog, we hit up the lodge early Saturday morning to play. This is that same Saturday, but now we're playing an evening session. Let's jump into hand number 1. We're in the cutoff and look down at the very pretty Queen Jack, Jack 10 double suited in spades and clubs. Under the gun calls 5. There's a raise to 15 and 2 callers. We call, the button calls, the small blind calls, the big blind gets out of the way, the limper calls, and we are going 7-handed to a flop, which falls King Jack 5 rainbow. The under the gun limper leads out for 115. It folds to us, and since the player under the gun just limped and then facing a raise and multiple callers only called, I have a hard time believing he's got top set here. Since we have middle set, an open-ended straight draw, and the 2 backdoor flush draws, it's time to bump it up, and we raise to 460. Our opponent repots, and we get our stack in for 925. We agree to run it twice, and the boards run out 7 of hearts, 7 of spades, and 9 of hearts, 7 of diamonds. We make jacks full on the top board and the nut straight on the second board. Our opponent turns over ace-queen 10-4, suited in hearts to his queen, having a wrap straight draw on the flop. So when the money goes in, we are over 66% to win. Our opponent wins less than 14% of the time, and we're going to tie roughly 20%. This time around, we managed to win 3/4 of the pot. The 10 of clubs has been exposed this hand. We're in the hijack, and we look down at ace-king, Jack 9, suited in hearts to our ace. The $10 straddle is on. There's 1 caller. We make the call. Now the cutoff raises it up to $55. The button calls, the small blind calls, the big blind folds, the straddle and the limpers both call, and we call as well. So we're going 6 ways to a flop with over $300 in it. Fuck these a-holes. The flop falls 8-7-3 all hearts. It's checked to us, and we make a smallish bet of 125, just hoping someone does something stupid like raise us. Ha ha, got your ass. The original raiser on the cutoff shoves all in for $155. Now the button shoves all in for $325. It's like a fucking Christmas miracle. It folds to me and I snap call. There's over $1,100 in this pot and we agree to run it twice. The boards run out the queen of spades and the ace of clubs and the 3 of diamonds and the 10 of diamonds. The button reveals ace 8, 8-3 suited in spades to his ace, having flopped top set and making his boat on the second run out. The original raiser doesn't show their hand. Looking at the equities when the money goes in on the flop, we're 67%, a pretty decent spot to be, but unfortunately we have to settle for 50% this time around as we chop it up. All right, we got this gentleman down here. He just hit quads and a full house. Top set, there he is. Say hi. What's your name? Say hi to the people. Hello. Hello. It'll be a couple months before they see this.
Full house. You got deuces full. He's got eights full. He's got top boat.
He's like a 4-way all in.
Jeremy, it's the biggest pot.
You didn't have any.
Biggest pot of the day. I'm not filming because I wasn't in it.
Clubs and he didn't.
I'm selfish. Nice hand. Nice hand.
We're 8-handed in the big blind playing a double board bomb pot, and we look down at Jack 7, 7-6 rainbow. The flops come down Jack 9-5 with 2 clubs and King 9-8 with 2 hearts. When it checks to us, there are 2 flush draws possible, which we don't have, and we have a gut shot straight draw on the top board with one of our outs already showing on the bottom board, and then the idiot end of the straight draw when we look at the bottom board. Not really the best prospects, so we'll check it over as well. There's a $100 bet, 1 caller, and another player announces pot making it 520. We fold and let's watch the action.
100. 520. 520.
That's going to put you about all in?
Yeah, I think I got almost 7.
He's got a little bit more. It's 6 or 7. He's all in.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
You got 9s?
We got the winner out.
He raised.
I call.
Okay. It's like 700.
You do it twice? You always do it twice, huh? Oh, that's right. That's right. Sorry.
It's technically twice, yeah.
We're already doing that.
I got a straight there
Dodged.
and 2 pair there.
You dodged it again.
King 8.
You dodged it.
Yeah. 2 pair is good on the bottom.
4 times.
Yeah, he's got a straight to the king. He's good.
You've dodged 11 outs 4 times.
I haven't even moved.
So you're going to be a star of this vlog. It'll be a few months, but yeah, wave to the camera.
It's another $15 double board bomb pot, and we look down at ace 6, 4-2 suited in spades to our ace 7-handed. The first flop is 8-6-5 with 2 spades, and the second comes 8-7-6 rainbow. These are boards that tend to not produce too much action. Because they're so similar to one another, it's hard for multiple opponents to be able to go to war, as usually only one player will be strong here. We do have nut spades on the top board and straight draws to the bottom end on both, and since we have the third 6, we know no one has a set of 6s on either board. Still, not a ton to get overly excited over, so we check. There is a pot size bet of 105, there's one caller, and we come along as well, so we're going 3 ways to return. The turns fall the king of spades and the 2 of diamonds. So now we've turned the nut flush on the top board, and on the bottom board, in addition to our bad straight draw, which may already be beat, we've added the impressive bottom 2 pair to the list of our assets. Still, with the nuts on one board, we can certainly put a ton of pressure on someone who may be beating us on the bottom board, but doesn't have the nuts. We bet the full pot of $420, they both fold, and we'll take this one down. We're in the hijack holding king, 5-4 suited in diamonds to our king. It folds to us, and we go nuts, raising pot pre-flop to a whopping $15.
Pot. We bet the full pot of 15. I just want to say pot. It just sounded fun. All right, the button calls, the small blind calls. No respect. There we go. Big blind calls. We got them. We got them right where they want us.
The flop comes down 7-6-4 with 2 clubs. Fortunately, it's checked around.
Is that 2 club or 3 club?
2 club, 1 spade.
Yeah.
Check. All right, let's check around.
The turn is the 4 of diamonds. We've now turned a very disguised 3 of a kind. In addition, we blocked the straight draws by having a 5 in our hand, and nobody bet the flop. Given we raise pre-flop on board textures like this that are bad for the pre-flop raiser's hand, usually if someone hits it, they'll bet it. So when they check to us, we aren't overly concerned that we're running into any scary monsters lurking under the bed, and we bet $50. The button calls.
Uh-oh, the button called. I'm in trouble.
The river falls the jack of hearts. I don't believe my opponent is all that strong here, but given this board doesn't bode well for my raising range, if we check, we can call any bet he makes, and at least give him a chance to try and bluff us with any missed straight or flush draws he has here. So we check it over, and our opponent bets $75.
You're just supposed to bet 25. Get a crying call out of me. All right, jack of hearts on the river. Hey-ya! I kind of have to call.
All right, we'll call then.
What do you got? Oh, you got fucked.
4.
3 4s, baby. We got him. Woo-hoo. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
You're doing the Lord's work. We got him. Yes. What are you laughing about? You just lost a pot to me. Stop laughing.
In this session, we won $969, and the next day we played a shorter session, which I have a few hands to share, some hands from a small online PLO tournament that night as well. In this Sunday session, we ran into viewer 300-pound Canary, but unfortunately the lineups weren't all that great for either of us, and I don't have a ton of footage, but there are a couple hands I'll show, and then we'll show some online hand histories as well. The $10 straddle is on, there's one caller, and in middle position we look down at ace-queen, 9-8 suited in diamonds to our ace, and we make the call. The small blind and big blind come along, the straddle checks their option, and we are going 5 ways to a flop. The flop comes down ace-king 5 with 2 spades, and it's checked around. The turn is a nice looking 7 of diamonds, and now the small blind bets out 40, the big blind and the limper both call, and action's on us. We've turned a good chunk of equity, now we have the nut flush draw as well as a gut shot straight draw to the nuts, provided it's not the 6 of spades on the river. If we were out of position, we might check raise in this spot, as I don't think any of my opponents are all that strong, but given we do have position on multiple opponents, we opt to make the call as well, and we're going 4 ways to a river. The river is the 7 of clubs. It's checked to us, and with top pair second kicker on this board, we'll take our showdown equity rather than trying to bluff 3 opponents. We can't really get called by worse hands, and better hands will certainly look us up. One of our opponents shows down ace, queen, 8-6 suited in spades to their 8, and we're going to chop it up.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night, man. Thank God, I never thought that guy would leave. Oh wait, is he still? Oh, wait.
We've just recently announced we're only playing a couple more hands, and this is the very next hand after we announced it. We're under the gun +1, and we look down at ace, king 10 suited in spades to our king. You ever decide you're going to be finishing up a session and suddenly you get a dealt a strong hand and you just feel like the universe is just setting you up for a massive fall right before you go home? Yeah, I get that feeling too. Under the gun calls, we call, early position calls, now the hijack makes it 30, the button calls, the limper calls, and we've got a premium here, so we raise pot to $160. It's the end of the session, but we got to play it right. The original raiser says he isn't supposed to give me action, but he's going to, and he calls 160. Now the button behind him shoves all in for 255 total. Unfortunately, not enough to reopen the betting. We call, as does the original raiser, and now there's over $800 in this pot. The flop falls Jack, Jack 2, Rainbow. Generally, paired flops are pretty good when you have aces. It's less likely one of your opponents matches the cards on the board. However, that tends to be a stronger guideline when the pair on the flop is low cards. 10s and up tend to be cards a lot of people will show up with, so there is some risk we could run into a jack here. However, with a bit over $400 remaining in our stack and over $800 in the pot, we're committed and we shove it all in. The original raiser fortunately folds and the all-in opponent agrees to run it twice. The runouts are the 7 of clubs and the queen of spades, and then the 2 of diamonds and the 3 of spades. Our opponent shows up with a single suited rundown of 10-9, 8-7, and we're going to scoop this pot, allowing us to get unstuck just before ending our session.
Nice hand. Thank you, thank you. I think that's the second hand I've captured all day. Yeah, I mean, pretty much between both tables. Yeah, you're not. Oh, they notice. These guys are no spring chickens. They know what's going on.
So for this Sunday session, we win another $245 on the day after being stuck most of it. Now on to some hands from a small online PLO tournament I played with some fellow members of the Poker Chip Forum, which will wind up having 13 total entries for $50 each. In our first hand of note, the blinds are 50-100. We're in the small blind holding King, 7-6 suited in diamonds to our 7 at a 5-handed table. It's folded to us and we make it 300, double eagle, and the big blind makes the call. The flop is pretty good, King 10-7 Rainbow, but while we flop top set, there are a ton of cards on the turn that bring in straight draws, so we continue the aggression betting the full pot of 600. Our opponent makes the call. The turn is the queen of spades, and now we slow down. We may still have the best hand, but we want to exercise pot control since we're playing out of position against our opponent. He bets 900, and we make the call. The river is the 6 of hearts, so now the 9-8 straight gets there as well, and if our opponent didn't already have ace-jack or jack-9 beating us on the turn. We check, our opponent fires a reasonable half-pot size bet. We make the call only to see the bad news that he drilled a 4-outer gut shot on the turn to crack our top set. Now 6-handed, we're holding ace-7, 6-2 double suited in diamonds and hearts. Blinds are 100-200, and Shorticus is under the gun and makes it 800. Since it's still relatively early in the tournament, we convince ourselves to call here, but looking back at this hand, I don't like it. The deuce doesn't do us any favors, our 6-high flush draw is too weak, and the lone connectivity between the 7 and 6 isn't strong either, as there's no backup cards for them to make wraps. So really all we have is a suited ace. If we were on the button and it was limped, I think there's an argument to play this hand, but facing an under-the-gun raise and being in early position myself, I don't like it. But we make the call, as does the button, small blind, and big blind, and we go 5 ways to a flop of 10-5-5 with 2 diamonds. It's checked to the original raiser, and there's over $4,100 in the pot, and he bets 1,380. It's a very small bet in relation to the pot. I'd expect someone with aces or kings here might make this probing bet into multiple opponents, not wanting to give up their control over betting, but also wanting to find out now if they're beat. With action on us, we take a line we normally wouldn't, and we semi-bluff raise to 3,200. We know this flop isn't likely to have helped the pre-flop raiser. We know no one else will have the nut flush here, so if anyone behind us calls or raises, we can let go of it pretty easily. Those decades of playing tight, solid poker pay off, or it might just be that no one had a 5 here, and we take this one down through sheer force of will and unbridled machismo. Please, ladies, form an orderly line. No need for pushing or shoving. There's plenty of poker Jesus for everyone. With blinds at 150, 300, we're six-handed and decide to get a little frisky, raising ace-8, 7-3 with 3 clubs in our hand. We must be taking poker Viagra because we're getting all sorts of out of line in this event when we raise it up to $1,200. Only Moose in the big blind defends. The flop is pretty good following Jack 10-3 with 2 clubs. Moose checks it over to us and we've got the nut flush draw, a gut shot to the idiot end of the straight, plus bottom pair. Sometimes in this spot I'll bet, and we can certainly flop some combo draws or sets on this board texture, but it's also a board texture that an opponent calling our raise might hit as well. We decide to take the free turn card, which follows the 4 of diamonds. Once again, our opponent checks, and we check it back. Now the river is the 8 of hearts, and now Moose fires out $1,800 into a pot of $2,700. Well, we just hit the 8, making 2 pair, and I don't know, what the hell is our opponent betting here? His line doesn't make any sense. It's like he learned to play poker in Canada or something. If our opponent had a set, or 2 pair, or even queen 9 for a straight draw, we would have heard something by the turn. I guess they could have a 9-7, but we do block that. I'm just not buying it, and I call with my weak 2 pair, and our opponent reveals ace king 9-8 for just 1 pair, and we take it down. We're in the big blind for 800, holding the janky king 5, 4-2 with 3 spades to our king. Win-win min raises the button to $1,600, and we have to call 800 into a pot of 3,400, which is just too enticing, and we make the call. The flop is ace 8-3 rainbow, and we check. Our opponent bets 2,800. We have the wrap straight draw. We need a deuce, 4 or 5 to get there, so we make the call. The turn is the 6 of spades, completing the rainbow board. Once again, we check, and our opponent bets $3,266 into a pot of $9,800, leaving himself around $8,300 behind. We've picked up additional equity, and we can now hit a 7 to make a straight as well. We don't think our opponent is super strong here. We might be able to bully him off this pot without our even having a pair. And if we are called, we still have some cards to make the straight, so we do have some outs. We check raise, our opponent calls it off with ace-jack 7-3, having flop top and bottom pair, and having a 7 to block some of our straight outs. Equity-wise, we need a lot of help. Our opponent has 70% of it, and he winds up holding to double through us. The very next hand sees us in the small blind holding ace-ace, jack-10, suited in clubs to our ace. It folds to Shorticus on the button, who makes it $2,400, and this is perfect because we just lost a big pot, and any raise we make will look like tilt. Plus, our opponent is on the button, the most likely spot to steal from, so it could look like we're re-stealing. We click that pot button, making it $8,600, committing ourselves to the hand on most any flop. Our opponent just calls, so now there's almost $19,000 in the middle, and we have barely $10,000 remaining. The flop of 8-6-3 with 2 hearts is not great, but it shouldn't hit our opponent too hard either, hopefully. We get our stack in, and we get some pretty bad news as our opponent snap calls with ace-king, 10-5, including the nut flush draw. In the moment, it didn't feel like I was as far ahead as the equities will show. I was actually close to 62% equity in the spot, but when you're facing down the flush draw here with naked aces, you never really feel comfortable. You always feel like they're just going to get there somehow. Unfortunately for us, we dodge all his outs and we find the full double up to get our stack back to healthy. The blinds are 600, 1200. It's folded to Shorticus in the small blind, who raises to $4,500 on a stack of under 10,000. With queen 10, 6-5 double suited in the big blind and the chip lead, we decide our hand has enough coordination to make the call with position on our opponent. The flop falls ace queen 2 with 2 hearts. Our opponent chips it in for roughly a half pot sized bet, and with middle pair, backdoor diamonds, and 2 backdoor straight draws, we make the call, and he shows us jack 9, 8-7, putting us in a commanding lead with over 87% equity. The run out is clean, and we're going to bust an opponent and chip up. Double Eagle limps in under the gun, win-win completes from the small blind, and holding a relatively janky King 10-6-4 suited in diamonds to our 6 in the big blind, we check our option. The flop comes out 10-10-2 with 2 hearts. Win-win bets 1200 and we make the call. Although I think a raise in this spot is probably better. The turn is the ace of diamonds and win-win bets half the pot for close to 3400 and again we just call. The river is the jack of hearts completing the front door flush. Now win-win min bets 1200 into us and we have an easy call. He reveals ace 7-3-2, so he bet the flop with bottom pair. He turned the ace and I guess he thought it was good. And then he wanted to name his own price on the river rather than check and face a big bet from me. I guess I got max value out of this opponent here, but I still feel like I should have been raising at some point in this hand to protect my equity from bad runouts. Blinds are now a whopping 800, 1600. Win-win limps the button, and in the small blind, we come along with King Queen 4-2 double suited in diamonds and hearts. We go 3 ways to a flop of King 7-2 rainbow, and we lead out for $2,900 with top and bottom pair. Double Eagle in the big blind makes the call, and now win-win on the button min clicks us to $5,800. Oh no, you don't step to me with that min-raise bullshit, man. Don't you see all these chips I've got? I'm the fucking chip leader. Show some respect. I re-raised to $12,800 to get Double Eagle out and isolate win-win. Double Eagle does fold. Win-win gets the last of his stack in and shows down Ace King 6-6. We're in a pretty decent spot as a 60-40 favorite, and fortunately managed to hold and send another player to the rail. We're now at the final table, and blinds are 1,000, 2,000. Under the gun, we look down at Ace Queen 9-7 suited in clubs to our ace. With a stack over 85,000, we have almost twice as many chips as our next closest competitor in second place. And what's nice is the majority of stacks are all relatively close. There's no one that's in super short stack mode, which allows us to swing our big chip stack around and bully a bit more. We raised to 4,800 and only ran miss in the small blind defense. The flop is hilarious, falling 10-7-7 rainbow. We have flopped 3 sevens, and there's just no fucking way our opponent is going to think we hit this board as hard as we did. He checks, and we bet half pot, and he just check jams his whole stack at us. We make the call, and he turns over King Jack 8. So while pre-flop our opponent had 60% equity against us, after this flop he's down to almost 10%, and he's going to need an absolute miracle to escape, and today is not that day. We eliminated another opponent and increase our chip lead further. Blinds have gotten serious, now 1,500 3,000. It folds to Rocket in the small blind, who's nursing a very short stack of less than 4 bigs. He jams it in, and unfortunately for him, we wake up with a playable hand in Queen Jack 10-2, double suited in clubs and spades. We have 59% equity when the money goes in, and after an ace-ace-9 flop with 2 clubs, we shoot up to over 80%, and we hold to eliminate another opponent and continue growing our stack. We're down to 5 players, and Tree Bark raises to 12,750 with only 10k behind. We wake up with a premium in the big blind, picking up ace-ace-9-7 suited in hearts to our ace, and we get the chips in. He's in a lot of trouble, and he turns over Queen Jack 4-4 double suited in clubs and hearts. We've got 66% equity, and we continue our run good with a flop of ace 5-3 rainbow. Our opponent now has less than 2% equity, and he won't be getting there today. Another foe is eliminated, and more chips flood our stack. In the end, we get 3-handed against Double Eagle and the Piper, and we hold almost half the chips in play. We wind up agreeing to an ICM chop after Double Eagle proposes it. We've been, playing all weekend. This is kind of our last session of the week, and it's late and we're tired, so we agree to the ICM chop, and I get first place and $246, which is more than the $195 that second would have gotten, but less than the $325 that was originally set up for first. Still, I'm happy to take the win. It feels good. Hey, it's Anthony. Thank you guys for watching. Over the course of this Saturday and Sunday sessions, we wound up winning over $1,400, so pretty happy with those results. And in my last episode, viewer Richard V mentioned that he doesn't like double board bomb pots. He feels that they remove skill out of the game and that they're just gambling. And I actually think the opposite. I actually think they require more skill, and I like them because
here in Texas, the games, you get a lot of guys that have really deep pockets, and they're trying to make the games play a lot bigger than the advertised stakes, and they're trying to make the games play a lot shallower with the stacks that are involved. So you get these guys that are trying to straddle and restraddle and just play bingo pre-flop and get all the money in pre-flop, and that's actually less skill because the equities are much closer, and so the variance is going to be much higher when you're playing that, because you're going to be in spots where you're 55-45 a lot of the times, maybe 60-40, and so it's less skill in my opinion. Whereas the double board bomb pots require you to navigate against the entire field and playing two boards. So now you have to factor in not just one flop, but two, and all of the variables that go in with that. So I find it to be more skilled, and I find it to be more profitable because people are going to make much larger mistakes post-flop than they will pre-flop. So I like them, but if they're not for you, that's your thing. But I don't like editing them. They are, essentially double the work because I have to put out so much more information. But I would play double board bomb pots all day if I could. And they do have a double board bomb pot only game that runs sometimes, but not all that often. And I think it's like, a $5 double board bomb pot. So it's not, higher stakes. I'd rather, 10, 15, 20 double board bomb pots. But again, if that's not your thing, hey, more power to you, but I love them. Anyway, I'm rambling, but that is it for this episode. Wishing you guys all a happy new year, and we will see you in the next one.
After watching a video like this, sometimes I'll like it, sometimes I'll leave a comment, and sometimes I'll subscribe. Sometimes I'll even do all three.